Today we're going to be watching why the Ottomans never colonized America. Welcome to Mr. Giant Reacts a Ting and Ting and Ting. I'm Mr. Giant, and we're going to watch this here. The Ottomans seem to be prominent in Europe and stuff, and how much places they conquered and all of that stuff. You know what I mean? So how come they never colonized America? You know what I mean? We're going to look at this Kings and Queens documentary here so we could figure out, well, what was it? Was it logistics? Was it cultural? Was it political? Or was it the fact that it just didn't have the manpower to do it? Let's YouTube and simmer and see what I go on with this.
Between the 16th and 18th centuries, most of the European powers colonized and conquered the American continent, establishing numerous colonies and settlements. Spain, Portugal, France, England, the Netherlands, but also lesser-known colonizers such as Sweden, Denmark, and Scotland, managed to set up colonies that would evolve into the modern nations of the region. But one of the major powers of the time, which had both the resources and the naval capabilities to...
Did it just say Switzerland? I never knew that. I guess I learned something every new,
venture into the New World did not partake in these endeavors. In this video, we will learn why the Ottoman Empire never competed with the other European states in the colonization of the Americas. In our opinion, learning new stuff and developing yourself is an essential part of being human. In our fast-paced world, it's often difficult to find enough time, though, as our work, social lives, and hobbies take most of our time. It's natural to think you don't have enough time to read a book, but the sponsor of this video, Blinkist, is here to help you with that problem. This is a unique app that takes the most important insights, new developments, and know-how from thousands of non-fiction books, condensing them into a 15-minute long read or listen. As we have to work almost 24/7 to produce our videos, Blinkist is essential for our personal growth. If you're interested in the history of the era and the Ottomans, you will love Age of Discovery by Ian Goldin and Chris Katana, as it draws useful parallels between the 16th century and our era. Unlimited access for 1 week to try it out. You'll also get 25% off if you want the full membership. To understand why the Ottoman Empire did not expand into the New World, we first have to analyze the causes that drove the European expeditions that led to the discovery of the Americas and that brought the knowledge of the continent to the Old World. At the fall of Constantinople in 1453, the Mamluk Sultanate of Egypt held a monopoly over the spice trade coming from Asia through the Red Sea. They imposed heavy taxes on all the export towards Europe, and only the merchants of the Republic of Venice were allowed to trade with them, making a fortune by reselling the goods in the rest of Europe as a monopoly. Many European states were frustrated with this situation, as they could only go through the Italian city, and one of those states was the Kingdom of Portugal. Portugal already had a tradition of expanding and exploring overseas, initially incited by a desire to spread the Christian faith and continue the Reconquista that had taken place in the Iberian Peninsula in the late Middle Ages. In 1415,
that's interesting that he said that, because he said about spreading Christianity. So, was it a combination of the trade, wanting the trade and to maintain the trade, or was it spreading Christianity? Or was spreading a religion, vis-a-vis Christianity, the political catalyst for conquering other lands, in the name of Christianity we're doing it, but underlying there's that trade, there's that money we could make, you know what I mean? Or is it some people exploiting the fact that ordinary people needed something to believe in, so if they use the Christianity thing, which what everybody believes in, and that's in any religion, I ain't knocking Christianity by no stretch of the imagination. If you believe, kudos to you, but using that to make the population, who are generally of a Christian faith, to think it's okay what they are doing, thus creating certain humanitarian issues. But if they're not Christian, then they must be savage, and if they're savage and they don't want to convert, then it's okay to do to them what they do to them. So then those who believe will be like, hey, you know what I mean? Of course, too, we have to also take into consideration that they probably didn't tell the poor people, well, the ordinary people who are just there living, exactly what's going on, you know, and what they're doing to get what they're getting. It's crazy. Let's get back to
Portugal
this.
had occupied the Moroccan city of Ceuta, obtaining a foothold on the North African coast at the southern mouth of the Strait of Gibraltar. His son, Henry the Navigator, would continue financing various expeditions to Africa and the Atlantic Ocean. His contemporary and biographer, Gomes Yanis Jejuara, wrote in 1453 that the prince was fueled by the zeal of God, by the desire for an alliance with the Christian kingdoms in the East, to know how powerful the Muslim countries were, to spread the Christian faith, and to fight the Moors of North Africa. While gold, ivory, and slaves are not mentioned in Ezerara's chronicles, it's quite certain that the Portuguese were eager for those and were looking for the sources of the caravans that traveled through the Saharan desert and enriched the markets of the Maghreb. Also, the input of the prince might have been exaggerated by chronicles and has been questioned by modern historians, as after his death in 1460, Portuguese explorers continued to push south. The efforts of the deeply Christian Prince Henry, however, still resulted in the colonization of the Azores and Madeira Islands, where sugar was cultivated, and the exploration of the Atlantic coast of Africa, where outposts, called feitorias, and forts were established to trade with the local Africans and to attract Arab merchants. In the second half of the 15th century, the Portuguese explored the Gulf of Guinea, Sao Tome and Principe, and the Congo River. In 1488, the explorer Bartholomew Diaz rounded the Cape of Good Hope, confirming that the Atlantic and Indian Oceans were connected. At the same time, two agents sent by King João II, Pero de Covilhã and Afonso de Paiva, entered the Indian Ocean through the Mamluk Sultanate and reached India and Ethiopia. These travels made Pero advise the king to go via the maritime route around Africa, as it seemed the most secure of the options. The return of Diaz was followed by the news that the Genoese explorer Christopher Columbus, who was hired by the kings of Castile and Aragon in the hopes of finding access to the Indian markets, had encountered land to the west. As Columbus had not brought back any spices, and it became quickly clear that this was a different landmass from Asia, the Portuguese returned their focus to their newly discovered African route, as the Treaty of Tordesillas, which we have already covered, attests to. In 1497, the Portuguese explorer Vasco de Gama circumnavigated the southern tip of Africa and sailed all the way to Calicut in India, known for its spice market, connecting the...
You know, you sit here, you're thinking, at the time they really didn't know the world that well. They just knew where they were. That was their time, kind of like man now going into outer space. I wonder if, like, centuries from now, there's going to be, you know, trading with different species and stuff like that. And who is to say those species are different looking from us? We don't know. We don't know what's out there. We may think that we are thinking in relation to our body, how it would work out there, but maybe they have the same body, but it's indigenous to the climate and stuff out there, or to the atmosphere, or whatever it is they have out there. But, you know, are we on the verge of finding new planets and civilizations like they did back in the day when they went traveling and end up out west here?
Indian spices to the newly established trade routes. Bases were set up along the way, and it would not take long for Portugal to enter into conflict with the Arab merchants that populated the Indian Sea. At the start of the 1500s, various conflicts between Muslim states, most powerful of them all the Mamluks, and the Portuguese navy, saw the latter partly blockading the Red Sea, starving the Egyptian state of spices. This caused the finances of the Mamluks to crash, and started a crisis that facilitated the Ottoman conquest of Egypt and Syria in 1516 to 1517, which was followed by their expansion into Arabia and the Red Sea. This brought the Ottoman Empire to the coast of the Indian Ocean, unfamiliar waters for the expanding Turk state. In 1555, the Ottomans would consolidate their position by expanding into Mesopotamia at the expense of the Safavids, and by taking Basra, which meant that they now had access to the Persian Gulf. All this propelled the Ottomans to become the new power in the Indian Ocean. With access to both the Mediterranean Sea and the Indian Ocean, the Ottoman Empire could have started to venture into the New World, and we have some clues that they had intentions of doing so. In 1517, the Turkish captain Ahmed Mehidin Piri, known as Piri Reis, presented his world map to Sultan Selim, which he had produced by using as sources 20 other maps, including one from Columbus. On this map, the New World is marked as Vilayet Antillia. The term Vilayet usually applied to an administrative unit in the Ottoman Empire, so it's apparent that the Ottomans had some interests in America. In his diary, Piri Reis writes that a Spanish prisoner and Columbus's map were taken from 7 Spanish ships, seizure of which has been dated to 1501 by historians. This Spanish captive revealed that he had been to the new continent 3 times, the same number of voyages Columbus had partaken in up to that year. This is also confirmed by the names on the map, which are the same Turkified names that Columbus used, such as Guadeloupe for Guadeloupe, and Undizzi Virgine for the Virgin Islands. Other pieces of information could have come from the many Iberian Muslims who were expelled during those years, and it's very possible that there was a network of Muslim informants in Spain and Portugal who kept the Islamic work.
No, I wonder how Islam didn't take root in the Caribbean around that time. I mean, even if the Ottomans didn't go conquer it, there had to be travelers according to what he said there. Seems like Christianity got a strong hold on there. And another thing too, man, these 2 religions been fighting for centuries. You know, when are they going to go, wait a minute, nobody's really winning here. One person take over and they have the power, then the next person take over and they have the power. Who's got the trades got the power, who's got the weapons has got the power, back and forth, back and forth. People are dying. And nobody's really winning anything. I mean, you have your section of the place and they have their section of the place. And every so often they invade saying we're going to have to, take care of them. And then nothing happened. They get pushed back and they just keep going back and forth. Doesn't make any sense. Let's go. Let's go.
On the exploration of the 2 kingdoms. This would confirm that the Ottoman sultans were interested in the developments in the Atlantic Ocean. Sometimes it is said that the Ottomans did not have the naval technology to compete on the high seas with Portugal and Spain. This is, however, a myth. As we have already seen, the Ottomans could hold their own against the Christian kingdoms in the Mediterranean Sea.
That answered one of my questions.
The maritime conflict continued against Portugal with a similar course in the Indian Ocean, keeping trade free in the Indian states for Muslim merchants, and protecting the Sultanate of Aceh in modern-day Indonesia from the Portuguese in 1564. In 1627, Barbary corsairs managed to reach Iceland and raid it, taking hundreds of slaves with them. It has to be remembered, in fact, that some of the technologies used by the Portuguese, such as the caravel and the compass, took inspiration from Arab and Muslim crafts and discoveries. One glaring problem, however, was the geographic situation the Ottomans found themselves in. On the other side of the African continent, and blocked from the exit to the Mediterranean Sea by Spain, the Ottomans found themselves having to circumnavigate the entire continent to reach the Americas. This was certainly not impossible, but it was still more expensive to do than for the rest of the European colonial powers. Also, they would have had to compete with the Portuguese navies replenished by their numerous bases. One way to overcome this problem was expanding through North Africa. It's not unlikely that one of the reasons for the Ottoman expansion in the Maghreb was to reach the Moroccan Atlantic coast, and from there compete with the Iberian powers. In the beginning, the Ottomans were quite successful. First in 1517 by taking under their wing the rulers of Algiers, most prominent of whom was Hayreddin Barbarossa, expanding at the expense of Spain into modern-day Algeria and Libya, and taking Tunis in 1560. The main roadblock was the staunchly independent Moroccan Sultanate. Morocco had been ruled from 1472 by the Wattasid dynasty. The Wattasids never managed to establish full control over the country. Ruling from the northern city of Fez, they lost various cities to both Portugal and Spain, while in 1524 they lost the city of Marrakesh to the rulers of the southern part of Morocco, the Saadi dynasty. The Saadi would continue to expand from the south until in 1549 the city of Fez was occupied by their leader, Mohammed al-Sheikh, and he overthrew the Wattasid dynasty. Seeing an opportunity, the Ottomans attempted to reinstate a surviving Wattasid prince in 1554, but they were expelled and the prince killed in the Battle of Tadla the same year. They also tried to leverage their diplomatic resources to make the Saadi recognize them as their overlords, but to no avail, and instead, the Saadi helped Spain defend the city of Oran in Algeria. In the end, the frustrated Ottoman Sultan Suleiman the Magnificent would have Mohammed al-Sheikh assassinated in 1557 and have his head brought to Istanbul. But the Saadi allied themselves with the European powers and blocked access to the Atlantic from North Africa to the Ottomans. In the end, though, the main reason for why the Ottomans did not make a bigger effort to challenge the territories in the New World is quite simply that the true profitability of the new continent was still greatly unknown to both Europeans and the Ottomans, unlike us who can attest to this in hindsight. Conversely, trade in the Indian Ocean was a well-established and rich business from before the times of the Roman Empire, and after the end of the Pax Mongolica, Indian trade had become even richer, funneling the goods that before traveled inland on the Silk Road. Columbus had sailed east to reach the Indies, and Brazil was accidentally discovered on a voyage to the Indian Ocean. Interest in the Indian Ocean was quite simply much greater in Istanbul. Silks were imported from the Chinese empires, while spices such as pepper, cinnamon, nutmeg, and ginger were harvested and bought in India and in the islands of the Malay archipelago. Attesting to the wealth that the spice trade brought is today's majestic city of Venice. The Ottoman Empire focused instead on securing its control of the entrance to the Red Sea by expanding into modern-day Yemen and Eritrea, and establishing relationships with various Muslim princes in the Indian Ocean. More advanced gunpowder weapons and ships, together with their titles of Caliph and protectors of the holy cities inherited from the Mamluks, put the Ottomans at the forefront of the other Muslim powers, and they would for years battle against the Portuguese for control of the trade routes in the region. At the end of the 16th century, the Ottoman Empire was not as powerful as at the start of the century, and their expansion halted as they entered a period of transformation that would continue into the 17th century. Suleiman the Magnificent supervised the Ottoman Empire at its height, and after his death in 1566, cracks that had already appeared during his reign worsened with his successors. Corruption, factionalism, and infighting paralyzed the Ottoman government machine, halting the state's ability to expand and partake in overseas ventures. The influx of precious metals into Europe from the New World increased inflation also in the Ottoman Sultanate, which led to poverty, economic crises, and revolts. This is not to say that the Ottoman Empire inexorably declined, as it continued to survive for 3 centuries, but it did put a dent into the Ottomans' ability to project their power. Externally, the many foes of the House of Osman put a halt on their expansion. Following the annihilation of the Turkish navy after the Battle of Lepanto, the Ottomans still managed to rebuild their fleet in a year, but had lost many experienced sailors that could not be easily replaced. It showed that they could not just force the Straits of Gibraltar, and that open sea competition against the Iberians would be hard and costly. The defense of the Habsburgian border and the constant skirmishes against the Persians also kept the resources of the Ottoman Empire in use. To conclude, the lack of a Turkish presence in the New World can be explained by their geographic limits, their competitors on the borders, and most importantly, the richness of the trade in the Indian Ocean. We always have more stories to tell.
Oh, that's really interesting. it seems like that's always the downfall of a superpower, you know. What's been working, they're going to stick with it and not changing with the times, you know what I mean? And then they start infighting because there's two different sections that say we need to move ahead, and there's one that says let's make it great again. I couldn't help it. They want the old way back, you know, because they think that their ancestors had it better that way, and they want to keep it that way. It's kind of like the same thing with some older folks wanting communism back in the Soviet blocs, the former Soviet blocs there, because they seem to have had it relatively good. But any system becomes stagnant after a while, and then there's some on the top who have everything, and some on the bottom have very little or nothing. And then that infighting, just like with the Ottoman Empire, you know, corruption here, you know, everybody's trying to money grab and all of that, create dissension, separation, and then the downfall of an empire, in essence. And we kind of seeing that happening right now, really, truly, you know. But anyway, man, that was quite interesting, you know what I mean? And I kind of figured, you know, the whole naval thing had something to play with it and all of that. But I did not think about the fact that where they were doing pretty good, and they wanted to stay there and concentrate on there rather than expanding. Because I think if they, you know, the people who are really thinking about expanding is the up and comers. You know, if we get this and we get what they have there, that would make us stronger. And then, you know, we could probably fight against those that are controlling us and have colonized us and have expanded all these years and have ruled and controlled everything. It's crazy how history just keeps repeating itself, isn't it? Anyway, man, I hope you guys enjoyed this vibe, you know what I mean? I'm going to leave a link in the description to this video. Kings and Generals, man. They got some good stuff. You all ought to check out that channel. Also, if you all like what you all see with these reactions here, drop a like on the video. Please comment below if you have more information on this. I'd love to learn as much as I can, and then everybody else could learn and take, you know what I mean? And hey, keep watching. There's going to be videos I'm going to put up here on the Ottoman Empire that I reacted to before, and you know, it's going to be in cards, and one is going to flick up here or there somewhere on the top, you know what I mean? So keep checking me out and take, you know what I mean? Hope you guys are having a good day. You all take care of each other. Cool runnings.